compilations. They're great, aren't they? They allow you to pick up 3, 4, or maybe even more video games, put them together in one package, and you can get them for a little bit cheaper. Publishers like them as well. Not that much development work needed, and they can be really cheap and allow you to use your back catalogue and introduce that to a brand new audience. We've talked about compilations before on this channel using the video link, which will be somewhere up here. And we are going to talk about another publisher. Going over to the Far East to talk about Namco, who made such excellent arcade games as Pac Man, Ridge Racer, Tekken, and Aquajet. Yes, please, we need another new Aquajet. So Namco are no strangers to going into their back catalogue and picking up 5 or 6 games to put on a compilation. They release things such as the Namco Museum Volumes 1 to 5 on the PlayStation, and also Microsoft Return in the Arcade, which featured 4 of Namco's classic arcade games for the PC. They also are happy to license it out to other systems. A lot of the quarter arcade cabinets from Numbskulls are based on Namco properties, so they're happy to use their license elsewhere. In 2020, they did dip once again into that vast library by releasing the Namco Museum Archive on Switch, Xbox One, and PS4. Now, that was what it was known as over here, but what it was known as over in Japan was the Namcot collection. And a few of the Switch games made its way over here, and of course things like the trailers did as well. Sure, everybody's familiar with Namco, but what of Namcot? Was this a spelling mistake? So I should say, it's not a spelling mistake. I first became aware of Namcot when I started my retro game collection and started collecting Famicom, which is the Japanese Nintendo games. One of the first ones I picked up was Star Wars, which is a Japanese exclusive, not similar to the JVC one that came out over here. And I was fascinated with it because this was a game that never got produced over here, as far as I was aware. But also the cartridge as well. The cartridge was completely different from the Western NES cartridges in that they were a lot smaller and a lot more colourful. And this one had a bright silver colour. Also, in the top left-hand corner, it had Namcot embossed into the cartridge itself. So the cartridges did look a lot different from the Famicom ones produced by Nintendo. So this got me thinking, what is the difference between Namco and Namcot? Spoiler alert, there isn't really too much of a difference. But I thought I'd take a little bit more of a deep dive. Where was Namcot used? Where was it not used? And more importantly, when and why did it end? Well, after a bit of digging, I began to piece together the puzzle. The official answer is that it's just a name that Namco gave to its home computer and console publishing division, particularly in Japan and particularly on the Nintendo Famicom. You need to understand where this was. So this was about 1984 in terms of years. Namco got started in the game industry, in the home game industry, by buying Atari's struggling Japan division in that year. At that year, in terms of in the arcade, there were games like Pac Land and Tower of Darunga, which made it a solid year. Certainly successful. Not as successful as 1982 and Pac-Man and games like that, but it was a solid year for Namco. You also need to understand that Namco may have had a little bit of fingers burnt from previous years. We're beginning to get to the time where there is a crash in the US home console market, and whilst the arcades were still strong, the home computer market was beginning to die out, beginning to struggle in the US. They may have also got their fingers burnt in 1982 from Atari when they released Pac-Man on the Atari 2600, which is widely considered to be the worst Pac-Man game of all time. So they may want to have just kept it separately as two separate entities. So you've got Namco in the arcade and you've got Namcot in the home market. It's worth mentioning that this is Namco as a publisher, not necessarily as a developer. They did publish games that they obviously developed, but they also published games that other people developed. Two examples include the Digital Devil Story Megamai Tensei, I hope I pronounced that right, which was developed by Atlas, and the Quest for Key, which was a game developed by a company called Game Studio. Also, other games, such as the NES port of Galpus, were outsourced to other developers, but they all had Namco as a publisher. So that covers Japan. What about the rest of the world? Well, truth be told, nobody really knows. There was no particular reason as to why Namco was the publisher outside of Japan. It may be some sort of brand recognition. Namco had a pretty good reputation in the arcades and wanted to use that within markets that weren't as familiar, or it may be something to do with Nintendo. I do not know. They didn't publish all their own games. Sometimes for games they did actually hand over the publishing rights to other people. So for example, in a foreshadowing of what to come, the Nintendo version of Dig Dug 2 was published by Bandai. So how long did this go on for? Well, despite being most associated with the Famicom, some of the games that had Namcot branding went on until 1995. I did a bit of research and I found that the last game to have any sort of branding, and I'm going on alphabetical order, is Tekken, the original Tekken for the PlayStation 1. When it was released in Japan, even though the arcade opening and the title screen had Namco, terribly sorry there. Stopping past Reese and putting in a little disclaimer here, because I was incorrect. Now, usually when I originally tested this footage, you got the title screen, and the title screen did have Namco. However, if you let the demo sequence run, which is what I have done here, you will see that there is actually Namcot, the logo that appears, but it also has the word Namco on the page. So, not technically true. Rest of it should make sense. Continue. I'll talk about the box art next. Yeah. The box art itself was branded with the word Namcot. Also on the PS1, there was a game called Starblade Alpha, and that had branding of Namcot on the title screen, as you can see here. Both of those games came out on exactly the same day, on the March the 31st, 1995, in Japan.
Energy to shields decreasing.
The next Japanese release was Ace Combat, also known as Air Combat in the US and the UK. It was released by Namco in Japan on June the 30th, 1995. As you can see here, a lot of the title screen and the opening has the word Namco written on it. But different to Tekken, this box art, as you can see here, has the Namco branding. So what changed? Well, a small bit of curiosity digging has found out that the Japanese tax year ends on April the 1st of every single year. Or it does for the last few years. I haven't been able to find 1995's tax years in Japan. So we can possibly assume that Namco and Namcot were two completely separate companies and separate entities, and they just kind of rolled in together, and it happened around the end of the 1994-95 tax year was Namcot, and then Namco took on from 1995 to 1996. I should state I am not an expert in Japanese tax law, so none of it is advice for anything. So yeah, that may not make sense and it may be untrue. I'm just speculating here. Either way, up until the Namcot collection later on down the line, the brand completely and utterly died. It just didn't exist in any way, shape or form. To give you a quick example, this is Dig Dug. This is my arcade version of Dig Dug, as you can see here. This is based on the NES version of Dig Dug. Now, the NES version didn't come out in the United States. It didn't come out in Europe either, as far as I am aware. However, it did come out in Japan, and in Japan it had Namcot on the title screen. So, I had to look at the title screen of Dig Dug on the NES, and it had the word Namcot. If you look at this machine here, you will see that there is no Namcot branding. Instead, it is just BNEI. And that's a story for another time. Thank you very much for watching this. I really, really do appreciate you taking time out your day to watch this video. Thank you to a YouTuber, I can't remember the name, but I'll link to their channel on this slide and link to them in the description, who I used as a bit of a base, and kind of they provided some of the information, and I did a bit more of my research, so we'll link to that. There's a couple of other articles as well I'll link to that I found particularly useful. They will all be in the comments or in the description of this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, because that really, really helps me, helps people discover the channel. Leave a comment as well. Have you had any experience with this? Have I got something horribly wrong and it was Dig Dug released on the NES? It'd be good to know. And yeah, do take care. We'll be back soon. We'll try and think of another video. Be sure to check out retrogarden.co.uk as well. That's my blog associated with this channel, and that has a lot more long form articles, a little bit more retro news, retro reviews, and various other things which you'll probably like. So see you around, and do take care.